Hey guys, my name is Seth. This is SageSmokeSurvival, and I'm going to teach you how to make cordage. Now, if you have a love for the outdoors or you want to start developing some survival skills, knowing how to make cordage is a must. Now, when I say cordage, I mean rope, string, twine, lashing material that's twisted or braided like rope is. In any sort of wilderness survival situation, cordage is one of the most useful tools you can have on hand for tying things up, for binding, for making tools and shelters. It's an extremely overlooked resource, but think back to how every sporting goods store you've ever been in has a whole aisle dedicated to paracord and rope. All of our ancestors depended heavily on the ability to make cordage, especially cordage that can withstand the strains of a bowstring. Ropes strong enough to climb and to hang things, to build houses and shelters. Now the good news is cordage can be made from a wide range of plants that are very plentiful all over the world. Now I live in North America, but what I teach isn't just North America specific. Now the best plant options for each region vary a fair bit, and it varies by elevation or environment. If you're in the desert Southwest, one of the best plants you can use is yucca. Now where I live in South Idaho, there's not much yucca. You have to go a couple hundred miles south of here to really start running into it. Throughout much of the northern states, the best options are dogbane or milkweed. Stinging nettle is another great cordage plant throughout most of North America and Europe, and it yields one of the strongest fibers. And those are some of the most commonly used plants, and if you don't have those in your area, you can still get creative because there's a lot of fiber plants out there. Willow bark yields great fibers. Even blackberry canes harvested in springtime, you can strip the bark off of and utilize that as a strong cordage. Sunflower stalks have a lot of long fibers in them too. If you're in the high desert, juniper and sagebrush can make good cordage, albeit not as strong as some of the other options. But in virtually any environment on Earth, there's some sort of cordage material you can harvest from nature. My favorite cordage plant here in South Idaho is dogbane because it's very plentiful. Here's a big patch of it behind me. It grows very tall stalks. And in my opinion, besides juniper, around here it's the easiest plant to harvest fibers from. And dogbane fibers can make much finer cordage and thread, strong enough for fishing line even. With juniper bark, it'd have to be a lot thicker to yield the same strength. Now you're not going to be any good at cordage making if you can't identify the plants that have good cordage. There's no trick to knowing what sort of plants are going to be good. You just have to know the plants. It's best to just know the species you're working with. Dogbane grows very tall, upright, little branching until it gets taller, and it's always going to be opposite branching, meaning branches come out of the same point on opposite sides of the stalk, just like the leaves do. You can see the leaves are fleshy, untoothed. If you tear any part of the plant, it actually yields a white sap. Now the sap does have some toxicity to it, that's why it has the name dogbane. It is poisonous to canines and other mammals. I always work with the plant in its dead, dried state, usually harvesting in fall or winter. By that stage, its toxicity is much lower, and it's not going to cause you a problem just by working it with your hands. Still, best to not chew on the fibers. Dogbane spreads through underground rhizomes, which are roots that spread laterally and send up new plants that are clones of the parent plant. You can see this plant is very popular with pollinators. It's in the milkweed family and yields a lot of nectar for pollinators. It always grows where there's water. In fact, it's easily mistaken for milkweed, especially when it's young. The key difference being it starts branching before milkweed does, and it tends to have narrower leaves than milkweed. Since milkweed is edible after cooking the shoots, it's very important to know the distinctions between milkweed and dogbane, especially in that early spring shoot phase. The dead stems of dogbane are what I harvest. You can see they're hollow. The structural integrity of the stems themselves is entirely because of this hollow straw of pith. Pith is a slightly woody material, kind of like styrofoam. This provides the structure of a lot of plants, and all the fibers are on the inner skin. So when you harvest stalks for fibers, you want to break open the stalks and start peeling out that woody pith. Then you're just left with the skin of the plant, consisting of the outer skin and the inner fibers. To harvest these stalks, best to have a knife with you. Those outer fibers are pretty hard to tear with your fingers, which makes them great for cordage. I try and harvest the thickest stalks all the way at the base. You'll almost always find it growing in damp soil as well. I go to the local rivers to forage it, where I often find it in dense stands that can create hundreds of feet of cordage. So it just takes a couple minutes to get a little bundle like this. There's just 4 stalks. It'll yield a lot of cordage. First thing is break off the stems. Here's our delimbed stalk. It's going to be fairly rigid. You may or may not be able to crush it between your fingers. Some years they grow thicker pith than others. When it's too tough to collapse, just take a rock and pound it on another rock and work your way down the length. With that stalk broken, it's separated into pieces. We're going to open it up along one of those cracks now. Just like that, pretty easy. Now for the real trick. I'm going to take that pith Bend it like that to snap it. You can see it's peeling away from the skin now. Now when you start at the base of the stock, to start, you can peel those pith pieces away entirely and then move up, but you're not going to want to do that again. You have to change it a little bit, and here's why. When you snap and peel it again, it's going to peel a lot of fibers with it. It's important that you go back and come from the other direction too, so the splits of those fibers all meet each other. You reduce the amount that pulls off onto the pith segment. I'll show you a more extreme example of that. So go and snap the pith, just peel the whole thing. Look at that, just rips a bunch of it with it. You wouldn't get anywhere doing that. You get 3-inch segments of fibers, which doesn't do you much good. So you snap it, peel it a little, and go back, peel the other way, meet in the middle. Any plant with outer peeling fibers, this is the way to do it. Milkweed, stinging nettle, even hemp and flax. You can even do this with taller yarrow flowers. I made a bit of yarrow fiber cordage. It can get a little squirrely and it can be hard to get all 4 at once. Just keep things from tangling and keep working your way down and you'll get quick at it. That speed will come with time. It's pretty easy to get fast with it. And once you work all the fibers out of the stalk, there's something else we do before we turn it into cordage. There we go. There's all the fibers from that first stalk. You can see the fibers are all connected to that outer skin. There's one thing we can do to break that up a little bit and free those fibers up a little more. That is, roll it in your hands. You can see that separates out the fibers a fair bit. We can tease them apart more with our fingers. And right now is a good time to separate the whole bundle. Go ahead and lay out your fibers and keep dividing that bundle to make those fibers as fine as possible. Now, in most cordage applications, you don't need to make it that fine. Quick and dirty cordage, you can take it straight off the plant and twist it. But for fine applications like thread or fishing line, or to have cordage with the most strength, you want to get the fibers fine, especially thick pieces where there's a lot of skin holding it together. Try and divide that in half. All right, with our fibers divided, laid out, now you can start twisting them into cordage. Here's all our fibers. Now to make cordage, I'm just going to take a few of those. And we're doing something called a reverse twist. Take your first bundle, line up any pieces, then find roughly the halfway point in the bundle and give it a twist. Twist it clockwise with your dominant hand. It should want to kink. There we go. And that kink is the start of cordage. You can see it holds together on its own. We're just continuing that kink. So now we'll hold it sideways. We have a top piece and a bottom piece. Dogbane skin is really powdery, which makes it really slick. So it can help if you get a little bit of moisture on your fingers. Every now and then I just kind of blow a raspberry at my fingers to get them damp with saliva. Spit on them or dip them in water, whatever. It just gives you more grip. Now, with the top piece, continue that twist clockwise, but then you're going to tuck it under counterclockwise, making that bottom piece the new top piece. You can see it has continued the kink, and we're just going to continue that. Pretty soon you'll figure out how to just do it with your index and thumb, and then tuck it with your middle finger and your whole wrist. So just continue that motion. You'll develop muscle memory for it the more you do it. That's why it's always good to practice. Anytime I'm out in nature and not filming a video, I like to grab a bit of something and just start twisting cordage. Keeps my hands busy, keeps the skill sharp, helps fine-tune that muscle memory. Now, as you can see, pretty soon we're going to run out of fiber on the top side. Not only that, it's getting substantially thinner on the top side than it is on the bottom. We're going to solve both these problems by splicing in some material. To do that, grab a little bit of fiber from our bundle. If it's a thin piece, you can fold it in half if you want, make it thicker, or just grab another piece and lay it along with it. And just lay that right along that top piece that needs thickening and lengthening, then twist it on in. Continue the wrap, and it becomes a solid piece of the whole. Now this is a pretty thin cord. If you want it thicker, just start with a thicker bundle. Now by splicing in more material whenever you need it, you can make it infinitely long. This is what people did thousands of years ago. That way you can have an entirely seamless rope where there's no knots in it. Many years ago when I tried to think about how rope would be made, I couldn't figure out that bit. I thought, well, if you made string by hand, you'd have to tie pieces. There'd have to be knots in it. But nope, you just splice it and the splice is entirely seamless. Once you have a few inches, you can strength test it. Dogbane is seriously strong stuff. If it was a little longer, I could probably get enough purchase on it to actually rip it. This just goes to show how strong it actually is. I mean, that took quite a bit of effort. Having it this thick is adequate for all sorts of applications like tool making, shelters, fishing line. Sometimes you want it thicker for things you have to wear. like a shoulder strap or sandal straps. At least that's been my experience. It can be so thin with no stretch that it can dig into your skin. Dogbane was nicknamed Indian hemp. Back in the day, hemp was one of the dominant materials rope was made from, and dogbane was like the wild version of that the Native Americans most utilized. You can achieve that same reverse twist much faster to make longer lengths of cordage much quicker by rolling it on your thigh like this. This method works great when you have a lot of long fibers, but for shorter fibers, I find I like twisting with the fingers much better. Dogbane's very suitable for the thigh roll method though. With patience and practice, you can get quicker and more even with the cordage. Getting it even was something that took me some time. Once I fine-tuned my skill to that point, I could pretty quickly make lengths of 30 feet. But cordage making is a critical skill for outdoor survival, and it's one I recommend everybody practice. It's one of the first skills I recommend people learn when they want to have more self-reliance ability in the outdoors. So get out, try and find some dogbane or some other plant that will work for cordage and see how much you can make, see how even you can make it. Getting it even is the real trick to strength because cordage is only going to be as strong as its thinnest point. Try other plants too, like milkweed or dried stinging nettle stalks. You can even peel the fresh, smooth bark from willow in spring and summer, and it makes pretty good cordage too. I hope this video helps you. Get out and try it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.